What's up YouTube, this is Ryan from AnnihilatorMTG here, and I'm back again with some more Modern. This week we're going to be revisiting Mill. While not everyone's cup of tea, Mill has always been an interesting deck to me. This is especially true given all the updates it's seen in recent years. Now the question is, can it still compete? Let's break it down. Unfortunately, Mill has a bit of an issue right now. As some of you may have seen in my Living End video, recklessly filling your opponent's graveyard can be a recipe for disaster. With this in mind, Mill players have been adapting in some pretty creative ways. First and foremost, the new hotness, Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Not only does this card eat low CMC decks for breakfast, it exiles the cards that you mill. This allows us to continue to push towards our end goal without introducing additional risk by filling your opponent's graveyard with value. The only downside with this card, outside of it costing 3 mana, is that it actively gets in the way of our main value engine, Visions of Beyond. This isn't always an issue, but it's an important thing to be aware of. In addition, we'll also be running a 2-2 split of both Surgical Extraction, which is to be expected, and Soul Guide Lantern. Yes, you heard that right, Soul Guide Lantern in the main board. This isn't something that I personally came up with, but it has been popping up in various 5-0 mill lists, and honestly it makes a ton of sense. The amount of decks in the meta that can leverage their graveyard is staggering, and of course by running Lurrus ourselves, we can cast these all day long. Outside of that, the list is relatively standard. We are including 2 copies of Counterspell just because I like the card and have had decent success with it in the past. What's more interesting to me is what we aren't running. You'll notice a complete lack of Mesmeric Orbs, Maddening Cacophonies, Glimpse the Unthinkables, or even Mission Briefing. Of those 4, the one I think I'll miss the most is probably Mesmeric Orb. That card can be absolutely ridiculous. But it is very interesting to see the evolution of this deck as more and more cards get printed into the format. With that said, Mill has proven itself time and time again, so I'll be interested to see if these new changes are enough to keep it going. Let's hop into the first match and see how it goes. Okay, looks like we found our opponent, best of luck, and this hand seems keepable. They get things rolling with the Verdant Catacombs, immediately passing. We draw Drown, let's jam the Darkslick Shores, and cast our Hedron Crab. Before their next turn, they crack their fetch, grabbing a tapped Overgrown Tomb, followed by a basic Forest. Then they cast a Finale of Devastation for 0. I have to assume this is going to be an Asmo. Indeed it is. That nets them the Underworld Cookbook, and I gotta say, using Finale like that is really cool. Drawing another Drown, let's play our fetch, milling them for 3, and now we'll hold up our spells. Up next, they play a Blooming Marsh and cycle a Street Wraith. Then they cast a Lotlith Troll. Haven't seen that card in a while. Think we'll let that resolve. They immediately discard their Daredevil, giving their Troll a +1/+1 counter. Finally, they cast the Cookbook. We'll respond to that by cracking our fetch and finding a basic island. That mills them. Then we'll counter with a Drown. The Cookbook fizzles as they attack us for 3. That'll bring us down to 16. We draw another fetch. Let's play and crack it, this time getting a basic Swamp. Overall, that mills them for 6. Then we'll push their Troll. It dies, and I think we're good. They play another Forest, then cast a copy of Shadow Spear. Really don't think we care about that. There's 2 Daredevil triggers. Then they go to equip Asmo. Let's respond by hitting it with a Drown. The trigger fizzles, and they send it back. Drawing another fetch. Normally this would be bad, but since we have a Crab, I'm pretty happy. Let's jam it, then we'll crack it for a basic island, milling them for 6 in the process. And now I think it's time to cast the Laughter. Wow, 16 cards? That's impressive. On their main phase, they play a Verdant Catacombs, then cast a Finale. Interestingly enough, Finale really doesn't care about mill. So long as you have it in your hand, it functions perfectly. They grab an Asmo, fetching for an Underworld Cookbook, which they cast immediately, triggering the Daredevil. Speaking of which, they activate the Cookbook, establishing the combo, then crack their fetch, failing to find, as expected. During their end step, let's cast the Visions, drawing 2 lands and a trap. We'll cast it, and they scoop it up. Nice. Since they have some awkward mid to high CMC cards, I think we want to cut the Laughters, which we could be totally wrong about. Either way, we'll bring in 2 Soul Guide Lanterns and 2 Thirsts. Yep, looks good to me. Hard to argue with a hand like this. We'll keep. They get things started with a basic Forest into a Goose, netting them some food. We draw Thirst. Let's play a Polluted Delta, cracking it for an untapped Watery Grave, and then we'll cast the Hedron Crab. Casting Thirst was an option there, but I think we want to save that for Asmo. Up next, they play an Overgrown Tomb and cast a sick Assassin's Trophy. We'll grab an island. Removal like that really isn't the end of the world. In fact, I'm not even mad about it. Drawing a Soul Guide Lantern, let's cast a Replacement Crab, then we'll jam the fetch, milling them for 3, and I think at this point we might actually want to take out the Goose. Their plays have been relatively low impact so far, so I hope this sets them back enough. Finally, we'll crack the fetch for another basic island and set up the Lantern. Targeting the Cauldron Familiar would be a huge waste, so let's hit the Troll King. Noting this, they sack their food and bring back the Familiar, draining us for 1 in the process. They untap and cycle a Street Wraith, playing an Urza Saga, very nice, and now they cast a Pithing Needle. We could activate activate the Lantern in response, but I'd much rather them name that than, say, Field of Ruin. Seems like they agree. As they pass the turn, we draw Polluted Delta, no time for that though. Let's jam the field, then we'll activate it, targeting their Saga. They grab a forest, and we grab an island. That exchange milled them for 6. So if our crab survives, this Polluted Delta will fill their grave to 20, elevating our visions. At that point, us losing becomes a lot less likely. We actually have to get there though, as they play a gingerbread cabin, making some food and casting a witch's oven. If we were playing a damage-based deck, this would be a lot more intimidating. With that said, they pass the turn and we draw Surgical. Time to jam the fetch, cracking it for another basic. 20 cards in the yard means we can cast Visions number 1. Okay, 3 lands, that's nice. Let's try it again. That's certainly better. And this is sort of what I was talking about. In terms of card quantity, even their crazy value engines are going to have a hard time keeping up. Regardless, they're going to try, as they activate a witch's oven. In response, we'll cast our Surgical, which isn't going to work, not by itself anyways. If we could, this would be a great spot for the Lantern, but Pithing Needle crushes that dream. They sack some food, and this technically wastes the Surgical, but honestly, even reducing their resources a tiny bit helps us. On their turn, they hardcast a Daredevil, think we'll respond with a counter, it fizzles. We draw Fractured Sanity. Whoops, without thinking I play the fetch before the crab, rookie mistake there, sorry opponent. Regardless, we'll jam it, cracking the fetch and finding a tapped Watery Grave, then we'll play the Sanity. That leaves them with 16 cards remaining. They activate the oven, getting a bunch of Daredevil triggers. Their familiar returns as well. During their main phase, they give it a friend, and wow, is that it? We hit a fast land, let's play the fetch, milling them for 6. Moment of Truth, we'll cast the Archive Trap, and that'll do it. GG's opponent. Okay, looks like we found our opponent, best of luck, and this hand seems great, definitely keeping this. Let's start things off with a basic island and cast Crab number 1. As long as this survives, we'll be in a super good position. They jam a Verdant Catacombs and crack it immediately, weirdly grabbing a tap Stomping Ground. I suppose what they're doing is fetching preemptively, that way we get one less look at Archive Trap. Huh, I like it. Either way, we draw Fractured Sanity. Let's play Crab number 2, followed by a Polluted Delta. That mills them for 6. Seems like we're playing against Jund with a heavy Planeswalker theme. That's pretty cool. We'll hold off on the fetch for now. Never know when you might draw a third crab. And wow, they just scoop it up. That's deeply tragic. Sideboarding in this matchup is going to be interesting. We know that they're mostly playing Jund, but I did see Grist, and I'm unsure if that changes anything. So with that said, I think we're just going to bring in the 2 lanterns and cut 2 counterspells. We probably could have just resubmit, but this should be fine. This hand is absolutely fantastic. That's a definite keep. Once again, they start things off very carefully, opting to just play a tapped Overgrown Tomb and send it back. We draw one of our lanterns, great card, but we have other plans. Let's jam the Darkslick Shores and cast Crab number 1. Up next, they play a basic forest, then cast an Escalated Collective Brutality, slightly punished for going Hedron Crab first, and shockingly they take the Laughter. Maybe I'm overvaluing the visions, but that card is just excellent. Drawing a Polluted Delta, let's play the Ruin Crab, then we'll jam it, fetching for a basic island. Finally, we'll cast the Lantern, exiling one of their Tarmogoyfs. Right on time, they play a Blackcleave Cliffs, but even better than that, they cast an Abrupt Decay. That's both crabs answered, unfortunately. When it rains, it pours. These lands look a lot worse when we don't have a way to leverage them. I guess we'll just play the field and send it back. They play a Bloodstained Mire, and then cast a Grist, upticking immediately. Seems like they binned an Inquisition, netting them a token. With how we're drawing, I think we have to cash in the Lantern. Definitely not what we were looking for. Drawing a replacement Lantern, might as well cast it, exiling the other Goyf. Then we'll play a tapped Watery Grave. During our end step, they crack their fetch for a tapped Blood Crypt. At this point, they probably don't have to fetch anymore. Up next, they uptick their Grist, this time binning a creature, attacking us for 1. That leaves us at 18. Let's cash in the Lantern for another card. You have got to be kidding me. Finally, we have some action in the form of an Archive Trap. Let's activate the field, targeting their fast land. We grab an island, and they grab a mountain. Time to mill them for 13. Then we'll cast the Visions, not bad. Let's play the Crab and jam the Shelldock Isle, milling them for 3 and exiling another Archive Trap. It's amazing how quickly this deck can turn things around. On our end step, they cast a K command, choosing Return Creature and discard. We'll dump the Watery Grave. Then they cast a Hierarch, attacking us for 2. We're at 16. I have to assume they're leveraging their Mana Dork to enable their Kroxa. This is a pretty smart play, but it also means that any fields we draw draw are going to be extra effective. After combat, they downtick their grist to destroy our crab, figures, then cast a Collective Brutality, so there goes our sanity. If we didn't have the Shelldock Isle, we would be in a ton of trouble. Either way, we draw Drown, that'll buy us some time. Seems like I was right, as they attempt to escape their Kroxa. We'll have to drown that. They attack us for 2, bringing our life total down to 14. Let's see if we can get something good, and it's a crab. Alright, they've got 21 cards, crab represents 6, and Archive Trap is 13. While we can't win this exact turn, we can get very close. Let's jam it, then we'll play the Delta, milling them for 3, then activating the Shelldock Isle. That's a free Archive Trap, no reason to wait, so we'll fetch as well, grabbing a tapped Watery Grave. Now it's a race, let's see who wins. That's a great start. They Fatal Push our crab, followed by a Tarmogoyf. It's a 6/7. They attack us for 2, taking us down to 11. This is awkward. We draw field. Let's play it. This might not be able to win us the game, but it can stop them from escaping Kroxa. We'll go for it, targeting their Blood Crypt, grabbing a swamp, and that's all we got. They have 7 power on board and 2 red sources. We could still lose here. Before anything else, they attack us with a Goyf, bringing our life total down to 4. Then we see a Kroxa. We're at 1, and they just scoop it up. GG's opponent. That was tense. Okay, looks like we found our opponent, best of luck, and this hand is decent. It has the potential to go very poorly, but being able to cycle our Fractured Sanity makes it much more appealing. Let's play our Polluted Delta and see what they got. They start things off with a Thoughtseize, that's never good. I have to assume they'll take the Sanity. Wait a minute, what? They targeted themselves. Oh man, they are not going to like this at all. Either way, they discard their Archon. Let's crack our fetch for an untapped Watery Grave, then we'll Surgical their dude. By the looks of it, their last relevant threat is the Angel, and outside of that, this is a relatively tame mid-range build. We draw another Sanity, let's play the field, and now we'll just wait. Up next, they play an untapped Godless Shrine and cast a Priest. It resolves. On their end step, we'll cycle Sanity number 1, drawing a fetch, then an Archive Trap. Since they have a Seasoned Pyro in the yard, this complicates things a touch. Reanimate that, and they'll be able to bin their Angel. The question is, do we care? And I don't think we do, so let's just play the Flooded Strand and send it back. They jam a fetch of their own, casting a copy of Persist, targeting the Pyro. It resolves, binning both the Angel and another Persist. Finally, they sack their Priest. We'll crack our fetch in response, grabbing a basic island, then activate the field, targeting their Godless Shrine. Grabbing our third island, let's cast the Archive Trap, which was wise because now they have protection from instants. We draw Crab, think we'll just cast the Laughter. Here's hoping that most of their top end is already gone, hitting them for 14, and I think we're good. They untap and swing in with a team, taking us down to 6. On their second main phase, they cast another Priest, followed by a fast land. Seeing an island, might as well play it. Then we'll cast the Sanity. That takes them to 0, and they scoop it up. I don't expect next game to go the way that one did. They're probably going to be much more cautious. With that said, let's cut the Fatal Pushes. That way we can bring in 2 more Lanterns and 2 Test of Talents. Looks good to me. While this hand is pretty funny, there's really no reason to keep it, so let's mulligan. That'll work. Shipping the Swamp. They start things off with a Marsh Flats and nothing else. We draw an Archive Trap. This is a little awkward. I'm not entirely sure if we're going to cast this, at least not this turn. My reasoning is, if we do so, that enables them to cast a turn 2 Persist with ease, and that would likely be enough to beat us. So I think what we're going to do is jam the Darkslick Shores and cast a Crab. They crack their fetch in response, finding a tapped Godless Shrine, and our dude resolves. We're doing this instead of the Lantern because they didn't play any hand attack turn 1, which leads me to believe that they don't have any at the moment. Up next, they play a fast land of their own, immediately casting an Unmarked Grave and finding a Terastodon. Once again, we very well could cast the Archive Trap here, but we're gonna stay patient. We draw land, let's play Crab number 2, then we'll jam an island, milling them for 6, and no huge creatures, that's good. Now we can cast the Lantern, exiling the Terastodon, and I'm feeling pretty good about this. On their main phase, they cast a copy of Persist. In response, we'll activate our Lantern, the spell fizzles. Finally, they play a tap Sacred Foundry and send it back. Drawing a Laughter, fantastic. Let's play an island, milling them for 6 and hitting no big creatures. Time to cast the Laughter. Regrettably, that only exiles about 9 cards, but this is a much safer way of milling. They play a basic Plains and cast a Priest. That appears to be it. We draw Fractured Sanity. Excellent. Let's play the Shelldock Isle, milling them for 6 once again. Think we'll take the Visions, and while we could hardcast the Sanity, we're just gonna pass. Being able to cycle at instant speed is huge in this matchup. Them casting an Unmarked Grave punishes us a little bit. With that said, I still stand by my choice. They bin an Archon, then activate their Priest. In response, we'll cast the Archive Trap, then cycle the Sanity. The Archon trigger goes on the stack. We'll have to sacrifice one of our creatures and discard what we drew. Alright, moment of truth, let's see what happens. Hitting a Shelldock Isle, excellent, we'll play it. And they scoop it up, GG's. And there you have it. While not the most complete look at the archetype, I still think Mill is quite strong. If your meta has a ton of living end, the Lantern inclusion is a no-brainer. With that said, if Reanimator strategies are the issue, Surgical Extraction is the way to go. Part of me wanted to try out a blue-white variant of the deck, but Drown in the Loch makes it quite difficult to play anything but Dimir. Esper is always an option, but that seems a bit excessive. I wanted to apologize for how brief this week's video is compared to the previous ones I've released. The storm hit us like a truck, causing outages and flooding. Because of that, I'm probably going to have to take a week off of making videos as I'll be very busy dealing with the aftermath. Your patience with me doesn't go unnoticed, so thank you. With that in mind, I wanted to ask the regulars of the channel what you thought of my videos recently. I've been trying my best to move away from the grading style of commentary that I did back in my earlier videos, and I feel like things are a lot better nowadays, but I don't want to get lazy. Any success I've had on this channel is all thanks to you, so I want to continue to make content worthy of your time. Speaking of which, if you like my content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. This stuff really does help, so thank you. And as always, stay safe out there and have a good one.